I don't know how to say this, so I'll just give it to you straight. Arsenal are by far the best team in the league this year. This is the Arsenal Vision post-match podcast. My name's Elliot Smith. You can block me on Twitter. Yankee Gunner. Happy New Year! Happy New Year. Should old acquaintance be forgot and Spurs are still shit and Chelsea and City and United and they're all just basically shit because they are. They're all basically shit. Happy New Year. Don't pinch me. If I'm dreaming, I don't want to wake up. Don't pinch me. Don't tell me what's up. Don't tell me what's happening. I don't want to know. If I slipped into a coma 7 years ago and this is some eternal sunshine of the spotless mind situation, leave me in the coma. Don't pull the plug, at least until we win the title. Leave me in the coma. Whatever it is, it's really, really, really good. And it's the kind of day where you're like, well, do I consume all the Arsenal content or do I consume all the Spurs content? Because, it's great. It's both. I think Tim quite aptly on Twitter noted that Conte is morphing into Mourinho, talking about the history of the Tottenham and, maybe fourth or fifth or sixth is the best this club can do. I love it. Just inject it. I hope you're enjoying all this as much as I am. And in case you were inclined to go full whiskers, maybe like a podcast you listen to, about us giving away a few goals at the end of the Brighton game, we won away. I remind you that all the other teams suck and did not win home or away to bad teams. So I wouldn't get too worked up about it. We got a full boat to celebrate the new year. Here with me now to talk Arsenal 4, Brighton 2, and all the other scores around the league and how early we'll have the title wrapped up is Tim. You can find him on Twitter at Get This Stillminator. Hello, Tim.
Well remembered. Hello there.
Yeah, I mean, give me 6 months. I can get it right. I am doing it on the day of Lula's inauguration, right? So it's apt that I get it right.
New beginnings, today. Yeah. Adults in the room again.
Yeah. And here with me as well, you can find him on Twitter at PosiMyPants. Paul, hello, Paul.
Woohoo!
And the man himself,
everybody.
He had dinner during the second half with his decent wife. I hope it was a decent dinner. It was certainly an indecent time for dinner, but we'll forgive him for that. Well, thank you for being here. His name is Clive. You can find him on Twitter at Clive. Say hello, Clive.
Hello. And it was a beautiful dinner. Looking at his phone the entire time.
Well, I was going to say, you picked the perfect time because we had it wrapped up. No angst, no worries. Off to dinner you go and just assume everything went to plan, right?
It went to plan. I did see a message saying 4-3. That sort of killed the starters a little bit. And I missed the tweet that said it was a disallowed. So I'm sitting there thinking, oh my God, it's 6 minutes ago and it's 4-3. Suddenly, mate, I didn't fancy eating. But
that's when you go, garçon, encore un Sancerre. S'il vous plaît, encore un Sancerre.
Yeah.
Another Sancerre for me. To be fair, Mitoma was miles and miles off. So I don't know how the linesman missed it the first time. Okay, Paul, I'm going to start with you against my better judgment.
Yeah.
Arsenal lined up with the lineup you'd pick. You'd pick it. You picked it. You wanted Zinchenko in. We had Zinchenko in. And right off the bat, we get a goal in the first couple of minutes. Martinelli shot, deflection, lands at Saka's feet. Once again, it's all about how cool can you be in the moment. He's cool as a cucumber. Zinchenko's in point blank. Odegaard does some Jedi mind trick shit in the box to send Martinelli in. He slides a little stab ball across the box. They clear it. We were all over them. What happened in the first 10 minutes that had us rocking the Amex?
Yeah, so Zinchenko was the thing we wanted to see in this lineup, and I think he was huge in the first 5 minutes.
It's like Shakespeare said, the Zinchenko's the thing.
Yeah, He did. He
said the play's the thing, but whatever.
Oh, okay.
With which to kill a king.
I was reading up on De Zerbi a bit before this game, and so this was going to be a very interesting tactical matchup, you think. And, this is supposedly a bogey team for us. Potter liked to put 5 across midfield, block it all up, press us, make it difficult for us to play out from the back. But we are now fast start FC. How are we going to do this? The way we generally have been doing it, I would say. Whether they get the kickoff or we get the kickoff, we're going to lump it into the right wing or the left wing corner. So we win the kickoff. We play it straight back to Ramsdale. You might think of us as a team that likes to control the game, play out from the back. I'm not so sure. I don't think we do that very much. In open play, when things are free-flowing, yeah, maybe. But given the option from a goal kick, from a kickoff, from pretty much any period of the game that we're looking to contend, we lump it long, win the second ball, which is
spring the trap.
Yeah. And when you look at the first 5, 6, 7 seconds of this game, over in the right-hand corner is not only Saka, White has got up there, Odegaard, Partey's just behind them, Eddie Nketiah, Martinelli is in the right-hand corner. I mean, it's not totally shocking, but it's very clear what the plan is. We win the knockdown. We look to spring a counter, doesn't quite come off, ends up there's a throw-in. They get the ball back. We pounce again right up in that corner, get a turnover. Odegaard drives towards the box, looks to shovel it out to Xhaka. Lamptey springs out, sprints down the field. Only Zinchenko is in that position you want your fullback to be tucked into, so he lunges at him, takes the first bite. Partey takes the second, gets the ball. Zinchenko takes the ball off Partey's toe, swings it out to Martinelli. Now, De Zerbi implied that maybe they were a little unlucky with the goal. Maybe he shouldn't have been so disorganized. But that's what you get when somebody springs a counter on you. Like, this was the third attempt at a counter at this point. And their backline's disheveled, I will say, unkempt. The ball pings about, lands to Saka. Why is Saka unmarked? For the same reason. Fast start FC, lump it up, press like crazy. Had they got the kickoff, they would have laid it back to their goalkeeper, and we would have pressed like crazy till they lumped it forward. We got it back and then done the same thing to them. And basically, the first 7 or 8 minutes we played in their half. When you look at where our centre backs are, where Partey is, when Lamptey springs out, the centre backs are, our 2 centre backs are on like the 65-yard line up the pitch. Partey's on like the 75-yard line. And we've got everything condensed and compressed. And it also reminds me of Arteta's point about, how does he feel about this high wire act with his centre backs? Because like they got 3 forwards streaming forward while Lamptey's on the ball. And Arteta said, well, like, even at that point, they've a lot to do. Even with our centre-backs high, challenging, if they miss a challenge, they've a long way to go. And in some ways, that encapsulated many of our fast starts and certainly our strategy in this game, because De Zerbi and his team love to play it around the back. They love to do a bit of a rondo, zigzag it through the middle. We did a lot of man-to-man marking to stop that in midfield, to clamp down on it. But Zinchenko, like 4 minutes into it, Zinchenko has a beautiful move in the box where him and Xhaka have toggled a little bit. Xhaka's dropped a bit deeper and let Zinchenko play forward. But Zinchenko plays through midfield. He's over. He's just stitching it together. It's a thing of beauty what Zinchenko does for us. And then defensively, he's right there where you would want him upfield doing the first press. So it's a extremely deliberate. It's not what I thought Arsenal was going to be a season or 2 ago, but it's clearly one of the ways we play. It's not how we played for 90 minutes, but it's how we play in sections, and it's really, really good.
Yeah, and like I think we see the benefit of having Zinchenko in this game very clearly. I mean, right from the start, obviously he nearly has a goal early on, but his comfort level in the box, around the box, the pace at which he plays the ball, I think he reads the game a little better pressing than maybe Tierney does. I also thought this was a great start for Thomas Partey, who was maybe a little more peripheral against a West Ham team that sat deep. But in this game, we saw him play through the thirds. We saw him make a ball recovery.
I think the pairing of them,
goal.
Elliot, Zinchenko and Partey, they 2-3 times they were so close together that they pinched the ball together, quickly played it out through one or the other. Like, there's a special magic when those 2 players get anywhere close to each other.
Yeah, I agree. I think it just really works. And we'll talk about how the game changed when we changed fullbacks, because I think that's a big part of the discussion of this game, of course. But early on, Clive, we settled into a really interesting battle that was being waged the whole game. And I think it was one of the more fun things in the game. And it was the Lamptey versus Martinelli battle. I mean, Brighton were willing to let Lamptey be isolated on Martinelli at times. I thought Lamptey did really well with him, to be fair. Martinelli had some joy. He had some times where he got in the box. He had some chances. He obviously gets the goal late on. We can discuss that. but I really want to get your take on that battle because I thought it was a really, really interesting one. A lot of 1v1s with Martinelli and Lamptey did pretty well to contain him. But that seemed to be a big feature of the first half that I thought was interesting to watch.
Yeah, I had a quick look at the average positions today, and Martinelli was way higher than he was versus West Ham. So it just goes to show you every game is different. Saka was much more a defender on this day because they attack very much left-sided. So he had a fantastic defensive duel day, and what a player
because of Mitoma,
yeah,
it was excellent. Yep.
And this is it, and so when you look at a game, sometimes you have to think about who's on the pitch, who you're playing against, and what you want them to do. So you think about it. So normally Trossard would play one of the wide positions. Trossard was forced to play centre forward, so Trossard is not going to be able to post up. So what do you want to do? You want to go and press them on, press into their half, and force them to go long. You force them to go along to Trossard, not Danny Welbeck running the channels, by the way, who wasn't there. Not into McAllister's feet, who wasn't there, turning around and knitting the play. Not into Cancedo, who's a second ball merchant, so he wasn't there. These are big players they're missing that affect their pattern. And so you need to force them out of a pattern. So by getting their heads down, playing in their half, really pressing onto them, and moving the ball quick into wide areas, which we do anyway, it's going to force their outlet, which was Lamptey, to stay back. So what you do is you make him stay back by keeping Martinelli high. You know, it's just very, very smart. And about a year or so ago, we played Nottingham Forest in the FA Cup in the white kit. Was it really last January? I think it was, Tim, nodding. Remember the full white kit than the no blood kit, right? So and he played against a young man called Jed Spence, who started the game just like this and ended the game as strong, Martinelli. And Martinelli says the hardest player he's played against. When I saw Lamptey making those tackles early on, I thought, you know what? It's another Jed Spence day. But the difference in a year in maturity of body, physical fitness, physique, speed, 1 year on, he wore that kid down. He wore him down, he wore him down, he wore him down until he couldn't stay with him. They were blowing. And for anyone who wonders, sometimes we all get a bit worried about young players and their development and how you measure it. That's one of my measures. Watching Martinelli versus Jed Spence, who was very quick and athletic. 1 year later, he wore Lamptey down and won the battle, scored the fourth goal, sent him into the evening moonlight with a few beers in his belly to celebrate New Year's Eve. And that's the wonderful thing about those two 21-year-olds. They're fantastic. They do what's required on the day for the team.
Yeah, I think, Clive, I got to at least ask you, though, for the Martinelli goal, how close were we to an absolute meltdown against poor Martinelli for not sliding in Bukayo Saka? I mean, it's results-based to say it all works out. He's in on goal. He toe pokes it through the keeper's legs. It's brilliant. But, man, I could feel the internet coiling up to have a go at Martinelli if he doesn't slide that across to Saka for a tap-in. Credit to Saka, doesn't remonstrate. I mean, why would you? You've just scored a goal. But were you a little miffed that he doesn't just make the easy pass it? And I guess more seriously, is this just the one little issue left with Martinelli, that he does tend to dribble with his head down, and if he doesn't get early pictures, he rarely gets a late picture, and if he can get his head up a little more, I think, maybe 2 years from now, he's sliding that ball across to an open player.
Yeah, well, we've done loads of rewatches together, and I've listened to you say 1,000 times, why didn't he pass it here? Why didn't he pass it there? It's all very easy from the camera view that we have.
From my position, it was a very easy pass to make. Yes,
a very simple pass. Yeah, I actually did have a look at his running, and I did like the way he ran with a level of control. Rather than being at top speed, he ran with level of control. He wanted to keep the ball where he wanted to keep it so he could score. I actually think he's maturing very, very, very nicely. I ain't got a problem with him, mate. He runs, look at the ball sometimes, but no one can catch him. So feel free, do what you like.
Can I have a nibble at that? Because
I was going to tee you up for it, because also you said something on Twitter that I thought was interesting, Tim, which is just he's not always aesthetically the easiest player on the eye. He's so direct and so aggressive in his running and his pace, but everything just seems a little right on the border. It doesn't always look as fluid or as cultured.
Yeah, it doesn't. There's a couple of things here. So as you'll have seen, I was directly behind the goal. I didn't
I
know.
have seen, yeah.
So I couldn't have had like a better view in some respect. I was third row, so I was on pitch level. I'm telling you, I didn't know Saka was there. It wasn't until I looked when I was on the train back into Brighton town centre. I looked at my phone and I was like, oh yeah, like Saka was in front of me. You know that we've mentioned it before, like the basketball gorilla experiment type thing. It was a bit like I didn't see Saka at all because I could see the second that Martinelli collected the ball, I could see where he was going. So I didn't look anywhere else. I was like, he's beelining towards goal. And like, and I think, there is also, the thing I said on Twitter earlier about him not being aesthetically pleasing. But as it happens, I've already written my column for this week today because I've referenced it so many times about the influence of futsal on Martinelli. That is such a futsal goal. Right down to the way he toe punts it. Like, does that remind you of a Brazilian striker from the 90s? Romario, perhaps. Yeah. How did Romario come up? Futsal. How did Martinelli come up? That's a futsal finish. And in futsal, it's you make your decision and you go as quick as other, because if you hesitate or you elaborate, the ball's gone. And that influences Martinelli's output. And this is why, Clive and Paul, you both referenced him like wearing the opponent down. That's how he does it because it's futsal. It's like he just wears you down. And the 3 open play goals are all Martinelli, right? He is the one who puts the ball into the dangerous area every time. Doesn't do it in a pretty way, doesn't do it in a way that catches your attention, but he does it. And so I had no problem with him not passing because I could just. He had the picture in his mind and he did exactly what he wanted to do. And I think he would have needed to have broken stride to put that across goal a little bit.
Which is
the
risky.
thing is, from the camera angle, you can see Saka arriving, but he's arriving behind Martinelli, and Martinelli's in a dead sprint against a very fast player. I think he would have had to hold up slightly to see Saka and pass it. And if he holds up, I mean, Lamptey does make a despairing dive right at the end that almost gets there. I think if he breaks stride even a little bit, it's probably not a goal. Clive, it sounded like you had something you wanted to add.
Only one thing. I just wanted to say, Tim's mentioned this before about futsal. I just wanted to mention this because futsal is now part of a lot of the academy programs and has been for a few years now. They do this on a skills night. So they get the young kids and they do futsal one night a week as part of their training. And it is all about ball manipulation, using the sole of your feet, flat-footed trainers, very flat, no studs on them. And you can see the way Martinelli, Tim's mentioned, the way he receives the ball, flicks it, rolls it, toe pokes. It's all that type of ability to help build personality in young men. So some teams use cages and some teams use futsal. So it is part of the academy training. We're going to start seeing a lot more of this now. I don't know if Arsenal do it, but I know some that do. But just wanted to say that.
And also, it's not a coincidence, right, that he's scored in each of the last 2 games, and in both of them, you'd say, oh, maybe the keeper should have saved that. Not a coincidence, because again, something that's really difficult to explain is the rhythm of his finish. You get accustomed to a certain rhythm when you see someone bearing down on goal. Martinelli always takes it just a half a second earlier than you think he will. And even like the assist for Nketiah, again, big futsal goal, chop the ball to your feet, because it's a smaller, heavier ball. For people who don't know, you have to smash the back of it and you have to smash it along the ground. And look at like the majority of Martinelli's finishes are either the toe poke or smashing the back of the ball, particularly with his left foot. And so, there's just so much of that in him. And when you start piecing it together, how there's 2 goalkeepers in 2 games who've looked a bit silly with Martinelli finishes, it's not because they're rubbish goalkeepers.
Yeah, I mean, well, Tim, the thing about this game that's so interesting, though, was how fast we got out of the blocks. And I'm curious, just like, it felt, again, like, I don't know why. I know we're a good team now. I know we're good. I know we are a legit title contender. But every game, there's that question in your mind, like, oh, will this be the game where we see the cracks go? Oh, this is a good team. They can have the ball. It's away. It's a bogey side. Away games are always hard. And like, we came out of the block so fast. We have a goal in the 2nd minute. Through 7 minutes of this game, we had 5 shots to Brighton's none for about 1 expected goal already. Post-shot expected goals, like 1.2, 1.3 expected goals. And like, we were just absolutely blitzing them. And I'm wondering how it was received, at the away end. Is there still a sense of, is this real? Holy shit, is this real? Or do you find yourself now at ease with it? Because I have to admit, as much as I know we're good, like I still watch us storm teams out of the blocks and think, wow, we're really this good. This isn't a mirage,
Yeah, absolutely. So just before this game, like Brighton Stadium's kind of in the middle of nowhere because it's a new build, so not easy to go to the pub before. Well, you can go to the pub before, but it's not one where you can leave 10 minutes before kickoff. So most people will have a drink in the concourse at Brighton at some point. So when the City result was coming through, most of us were there clutching our beer, looking up at Sky Sports News. And, and we were like, me and my mates were like, we've got to stop looking at the score. Like, we turned our backs to the screen. It's just like, we'd heard Everton had equalised and we were like, right, let's try and avoid this. But you can't because everyone's watching. And then you hear this, what? Go up. And it's 11-minute stoppage time. And you're like, oh, Christ. And then like,
it was every bit as bad as you think it might have been, by the way, Tim. Like, it was excruciating.
Like, was it John Stones or someone who had a big chance in like the 101st minute or something from the highlights? But
it led to a corner kick that was like the last play of the game. Like, it literally was scrambled away, like 3 different shots from within the 6-yard box.
And that's it. And so you already, like I've always said that my favourite and least favourite things about being in a title race are you don't just support your own team and go through it. You go through it with every game that your rivals are playing. And that's what this felt like. And you had Newcastle drawing as well, which was like, that was more a half an eye situation. And all of us were just like, we can't deny the pressure's on. And it reminded me a little bit of the Chelsea away game when I've referenced this before. Miguel Delaney, tweeted like, is this the first time this season that there's pressure? There's actual pressure on Arsenal because this is, I think results had maybe gone our way that weekend and we were playing last and it was a big game and we just went and bossed it. And it's like the same here. Like we were all, and there was just like a big... You can't stop that when like other results go your way and everyone's like, this is a massive opportunity. This is a massive opportunity. And like the word I'd use for the way Arsenal are playing at the moment is template. We just stick to that template of pushing teams back. And, as Paul referenced, we've scored so many early goals this season because we clearly have like a set menu of what we're going to do in like the first 10 minutes or so. And at half time...
We were determined, Tim, that the football in the first 5-10 minutes would be played in their half, not in our half.
Exactly, which is another really... I'm sure this isn't why we did it, but that's another good way of getting the nerves out of you, like just like get all that nervous energy out in the first 5-10 minutes. But at half time, the conversations I was having in the ground was just like we were giddy. It was just like, and then you start to get to this, are we going to do it? We might do this, we might do this, and then you start having the conversation about, and actually, if we don't from here, it's going to start to feel like really bad. And then I had one of those wonderful urinal conversations at half time where the guy was just like, the guy just looked at me and just went, we're going to win the fucking league. And I was like, shush, don't say it. You're going to break it. He was like, mate, look, all the pressure is on us tonight. And this is what we're turning up with. And I was like, I know, but don't say it. But
you got to be careful
jokingly,
because,
yeah.
I don't want to get too much into anatomy, but if you get too excited while you're trying to have
of course,
the male anatomy does not allow that to happen. So you got to be careful about talking about titles while you're trying to.
Of course, and we ended up arm in arm, and no, we didn't. But it was
after you left.
It was
no kink shaming here.
There was a sense of giddiness. That's what I'd say. This kind of shit, like this feels real now, and this team looks real.
And in case you're wondering, like, what kind of influence Zinchenko had, he played 59 minutes. He was the first sub. He had the most touches of any Arsenal player. And that was in just 59 minutes. He's so influential. But Paul, the other player that, again, I feel like we could just repeat our old podcasts because, once again, during our period of dominance, the man who is proving to be in the conversation for player of the season in the Premier League in a world where Erling Haaland is is just zapped out of existence. If he's blipped, then it's Martin Odegaard. And he had all the tricks out again. He had that, like I said, that little in the box slip back. What does he do? He drags it back and back heels it between two defenders into Martinelli. He goes Ozil bounce pass shot from 15 yards out, 16 yards out to score his goal. He was just imperious once again, and doing the snide little stuff, the early tackles, early fouls to stop counters, taking the ball off people, killing people dead with silky touches. Once again, it feels unnecessary and redundant, I guess, to just heap praise on Martin Odegaard, but it would be silly not to. Are you as enamored of this performance as you were of his performance against West Ham?
Yeah, more so, I think. He brought even more of it. His tricks always have a purpose. They just happen to be the best optimized way to get the ball to where he's trying to get it to. He's so switched on when we're on the ball. He's the first to switch on when we lose the ball. And in that, again, periods, those blistering periods where we're determined to play in their half in a very tight area of the pitch and win the ball back, he's the guy they're all keying off. He's the one who brings I think we talked about this recently. He's the one who brings the same level of intensity, the same switched onness as Gabriel Jesus. And one of the reasons, Eddie's doing pretty well, I think, doing all the same kinds of things. But it's Odegaard and maybe to a lesser degree Martinelli, who are the guys who are maintaining that intensity, that switched onness. And just his combinations, him and Saka has been a relationship that we've seen dominate over the last, calendar year or so. But him and Partey, him and Zinchenko in this game, it's those magic little combinations, pulling those players together in the same area of the pitch, nice and tight, is how we ping it around quickly, leave them for dead after a short rondo, and spread it wide to Martinelli, who brings it back the other way. The number of players we get in the box because of that. If you swing it out to Martinelli and you have 3 or 4 or 5 players who've just done a rondo with Odegaard on the right-hand side of the pitch, those guys are all streaming in. We had 6-7 players in the box, I think, on that clever little Zinchenko play 4 minutes into the game. It's I've heard about, we used to be really pleased when we get 3 in or 4 in, right? This wasn't off a corner. This was off open play. We had, I think we'd 6 and 1 Zinchenko or somebody else, maybe Xhaka, standing on the edge of the box. We basically had 7 players and Partey pushed up and the 2 centre-backs, all because of the tempo we're playing at. Leaves their players in tatters, littered all over the pitch as we play around them, swing it to the other side. Of course, the game didn't, at some stage things settled down and De Zerbi ball, playing it around the back, etc. But we didn't wait in the first 10 minutes to see what De Zerbi might want to do, playing around from the back, zipping it through the middle. Odegaard is the guy who brings that heat. You add Zinchenko and Partey to that, and that's one hell of a midfield. And one of them isn't even a midfielder.
Yeah, I just I love that things are working the way ideally you'd like them to. And what I mean is, when you build through a young team, one of the ways you can get better is just organic improvement, right? Saka continues to improve. Martinelli continues to improve. Odegaard continues to improve. And they are all doing that and doing it exceptionally well. Like this, we've kind of elided the Saka goal because it seems very easy, but it's a really cool finish again to give us a lead. And he being in the right place is a skill. Clive, the pattern of play though is interesting, right? I mean, we discussed this in a bit of a preview. That Brighton are a team that are going to want to have the ball. And they did start to get their foot on the ball. And we played in a mid-block, which is not something we've seen us do a lot this season. And I'm curious how you felt about that period, as we started to sink into a mid-block. I'm not talking about the period where they were very well on top after the subs, but sort of 20-ish minutes, 30-ish minutes up until, we were 3-0 up and thinking we were out of sight and off in the distance. But I have not concerns. I have some misgivings about the way we played during that period, because I thought that we didn't always hit our spots for, like they were able to find some good positions. But the thing that I think Brighton did is they had a lot of sterile domination, if we were going to say it the other way around, right? They had the ball without really getting it anywhere. But if there was one thing that worried me a little bit, it was Saliba. He did have a few mistakes before he really got it wrong and gave away a goal. Early on, like in the 12th minute, he got caught in the wrong side, on the touchline side, and it gets into the box and it's scrambled away. Gabriel does well to help him out once. White does well to help him out another time. What do you think about our mid-block defending, and in particular Saliba, who to me still looks like he's got a lot of rust to knock off from the World Cup?
Yeah, so what do we do? So we're playing well. You have to remember, the team talks are going to be quite similar. Brighton want to play in our half. We want to play in their half. So we have to be more aggressive, more dual orientated to keep them back and technically be better, quicker, faster to the regains, manage those, regain, retain, play through, form your triangles, right? So the big thing for me in this game that I took away was the recognition of the triangle when it wasn't there, how we formed it to create passing lanes to get out. That killed them. That to me was the number one thing. I know you speak a lot about consistency, and there are principles of play which we are implementing in every single game, and the players know what their roles are to create those triangles and diamonds, to progress the ball with quality and skill, to go out, to come back in, and it's beautiful. But when it doesn't work, around that period, there was a couple of things that went wrong. A couple of slack passes. There was an Eddie handball when he came from deep, a little bit late, arrived late, handballed it. And 2 or 3 inaccuracies led to a couple of shots, and they got territory. So what you have to do as a team, you got to say, you know what? They're having their moment. Let's let them have their moment, but we're going to shift into our 4-4-2 mid block. And that's it. And what you don't want to do is give people space like we did when the subs came on. You don't want to give them dog legs in the back line. You don't want to give them space, because space can score against you, if you see what I mean. If you leave the space, space will score. They will go through into that space. They want to pull you out. They want to go into that area when a player leaves it, and then they want to go pop in and score. And so by standing still and just shuffling from side to side, you can wait just and test their patience. They may rack up the passes, Elliot, and I looked at Stat Zone today, and we're not in the top 10 passing combinations, but we won the XG, didn't we? Right, so
I mean, that's the crazy thing. 32% possession in this game, Clive. Now some of that's game state, because late on they dominated it, but I think it was 2.9 to 1.2 on XG, 14 to 9 in shots, and we were out shooting them 14 to 4 at one point. So when this game was a contest, and some might say it was a contest till the end, I don't think it really was, but when this game was a contest, we dominated the danger. We dominated the moments of real consequence, if that makes sense.
We looked ruthless. They were getting more and more tired running backwards, and we were separating away from them late in the game. So on Saliba, I mean, he did. I think his last game was November the 12th. He played half an hour against Tunisia in the World Cup. He didn't play for like 6 weeks, basically. If he had a 6-week injury, we'd be saying nothing about it. We'd be saying he needs a bit of time to get back. If you watch that Tunisia game, we spoke about it in one of the podcasts we did. He was not good for the first part of that Tunisia game. He did not play well. And it made me realize something about him, that he needs to play. He needs to be in condition. He needs to be tip-top. And we had him tip-top, playing a lot of minutes, a lot of time. And that's how he needs to roll. He's a bit like Granit Xhaka that way. He needs to play all of the time, And then as soon as he does, he can keep to his peak levels. And we just have to play him through it, right? On the goal, he wants to let it run across him, hit his leg, back into play. I'm actually glad the guy scored. If he takes him out, it's a penalty and potential, well, it's a definite yellow card, which brings him to 1 game suspension for 5 bookings. And it could have been a red card potentially if he gets it wrong. And so I'm glad he made a mistake. They score. We go away, and he gets another game in his legs. I think once he plays through it, he'll be absolutely fine. And we, again, recognition of stress. Gabriel is stepping up. Ben White stepping up. And so Saliba's been a major factor for us, hasn't he? Sweeping round. He's saved a lot of rusty players next to him on occasion. So maybe now we need to save him until he gets his legs back under him.
Yeah, I'm not too worried. I mean, Tim, do you have any concern about the Saliba thing? Like let's just say this was not a good game for Saliba. I think the part about Saliba's game that I tend to just expect is a sort of silkiness, a sort of smoothness, right? In terms of he does everything with a cool head and a calmness, runs alongside a player, doesn't dive in. And the passing, it's vertical, it's accurate. I think that some of the verticality has gone out of his passing. I think some of the calmness in stressful situations has gone out of him a little bit. And I can understand he hardly played for France. He's the pace of the Premier League is relentless. And he did suffer a disappointment in the World Cup, whether you want to acknowledge that or not. Like that, just because you're not playing doesn't mean you're not invested. He was part of that squad. So any concerns? I mean, any thoughts on the form of Saliba? Because if you had to nitpick Arsenal right now, it'd be very, very, very hard to do because we're a very, very good team. The nitpick would be in his 2 games back, Saliba's looked a little rusty, and that would probably be the extent of it.
Yeah, definitely. And look, again, I think it's a question more of timing than anything. And we talked about that when we broke down the West Ham goal, the kind of just half a second out. And it's the same here, really. Like with that Brighton goal, we've seen him do that 100 times already, where you know what he's going to do, just let the ball drift across his body. He's going to steer it out of danger, go over towards the corner of the penalty area and play from there, which is just good defensive play. You take the ball out of the danger area, you get it back under control, then you play. That's what he planned to do. He took his eye off it for half a second. It hits him on the shin, and that's that's a question of timing. I'd have been a lot more worried if he hadn't been there at all, or he'd been 5 yards further up, or tried to play offside. He was in the position he needed to be in, about to do the thing we've seen him do 100 times before, and the timing's a bit off, just like the timing was a bit off against West Ham. So to me, at this moment in time, it just looks like a little bit of tuning. And I think Clive's right. I watched when he came on against Tunisia, he wasn't that good. Just clearly lost maybe a little bit of rhythm. And, that will impact different players differently. Ben White didn't play for 6 weeks, come back. Looks like he's benefited from the rest, if anything, because he looks as imperious as ever. But he's 25 and Saliba's 21. Ben White's been playing regular football. He's barely missed a minute for Leeds, Brighton, Arsenal, in the last kind of 4 years or so. So maybe it stands to reason that he comes back to the rhythm a little bit more quickly. Whereas Saliba's 21. This is Marseille loss. Well, I guess he has been playing regular football, to be fair. This is the first time he's been playing regular Premier League football. And it's just his timings are half a second off at the moment. And I think he's got enough credit in the bank for me to say, well, for everyone to say that's not a big issue at this moment in time.
Yeah, I agree with that. Look, I still want to get to the results around the league a little bit in the context of where we are in the league, and look ahead to Newcastle, and get to how the subs destabilized us and the end of the game, and if there's anything to worry about there. But Paul, before we do all that, I think we should be on Nketiah watch nonstop, because obviously scrutinizing every single thing Nketiah does on the pitch is the most important thing we can do as Arsenal supporters right now. There's something so beautiful, right, about this panic we had about losing Gabriel Jesus. And we've been back 2 games post World Cup, and we've gotten a goal from Saka, from Nketiah, from Martinelli in the first game, and Saka and Nketiah and Martinelli and Odegaard in the next game. And it's easy to have an inferiority complex versus names, right? You look at some of the names on these other squads and they're bigger names, but are they bigger players? I mean, maybe Haaland right now is the biggest of them all, literally, and in terms of his play. But I'm not sure you'd swap out, any of these guys. And the fact that they're all doing it and lifting one another's great. And what's nice about this game is I think there was more balance to the flanks in this game than there was in the last game. So that was nice to see. The Nketiah goal, you got to be careful about praising tap-ins, because people will say you're looking for reason to praise it. I do think that there is a thing that center forwards are supposed to be able to do, which is find where the space is, anticipate where the ball's going to be, gamble, make the early run, arrive on time at the near post. What drove us nuts about Lacazette, he just was never arriving. He never arrived. And to be fair, that's because it's hard to get an Uber onto the pitch to pick him up and take him to the box. But I will probably say something you won't like, which is I don't think Eddie is contributing much in build-up right now. I don't think he's been as effective doing the Jesus thing which is to be expected. He's not going to ever be Jesus. But I think what he's doing as a striker, the goal he scored against West Ham and the goal he scores here, the quintessential center forward play. And that's something that is not a bad thing to have. So the goal, the general play, what's your feeling about Eddie's second chance to be the main man up front?
Yeah, so I think there's a few ways to look at it, and all of them, it's like looking at a mountain from a few different sides, right? All of them are a view of the same mountain. If you were to black box Eddie Nketiah, the player, and just say, our striker up front, as you pointed out, we had 3 goals from our front 3. Now we've had 4 goals from our front 4, adding in Odegaard. Everybody's playing, everybody's functioning. Whoever that guy in the box there is doing apparently plenty more than the minimum required for that job to keep it rolling. Of course, Gabriel Jesus is world class. He's not world class as a finisher, so he must be world class for everything but finishing. And he is. So, like, Eddie's just not going to be as good at every other dimension of the game. What's interesting when you look at Eddie's radar, as Scott did for us, versus Gabriel Jesus's radar, where he lays out, contribution in each area, passing, percentages, basically tracks whether you do all the blocking and tackling, the build-up work, the defensive, all the good things in terms of possession. And they're very, very, very similar profiles. It's just Gabriel Jesus is about 10% more of everything across the board. Now, on the other hand, Eddie is still learning how to play like a Gabriel Jesus. So over time, he might even chip away at that for us over the next week or two. I thought he was really good. I know we don't remember him being particularly outstanding in this game, but he's got basically the same number of tackles. He's got decent number of tackles. He's got 4 fouls, which is good. Those will be tactical. So he's jumping in at the right moments. He's got as many passes basically as the other 2 lads, Saka and Martinelli. He's got as many touches as the other guys. So he's not that guy just sitting there waiting for a bit of service.
Yeah, can I give you something interesting? Just really quick, just funny. Nketiah, 34 touches. Martinelli, 37 touches. Saka, 34 touches. Xhaka, 34 touches. Partey, 31 touches. Aside from Odegaard and Zinchenko, who are at 42 and 43, like Nketiah, Martinelli, Saka, Xhaka, like just an even amount of involvement, just on the ball.
Yeah, there's a real balance, interchangeability. It's almost like it's total football.
Almost,
and
yeah.
I gave him a stock rising, not because he's great, but because anytime he's good and not the story, he's a stock rising for us, at least for another game or two till we fully settle into, this guy should be good. That's 2 games in a row. He's more than done the minimum requirements, the minimum viable for that position. I think he's pretty good. He wasn't outstanding, but the goal, right? Tap-ins are only tap-ins if you do the necessary. So the first thing he does is he peels to the right to stretch their defense. Nothing mind-warping about it, but he knows where to be and what to do, and he's a threat, so they go with him. So Martinelli's 1v1 versus his guy. Martinelli takes his cross/shot. Eddie's on the blind side of his centre-back so that he can't get to it, except he nips to the right side just at the right moment, so the centre-back's like, holy fuck, where did he come from? And Eddie's in open space in the 6-yard box. I mean, those 2 things shouldn't be in the same sentence for the other team. But he is, and he doesn't need to squeeze it past the keeper. He's got the goal at his mercy. I mean, it's all the kind of stuff. It's not brilliant, but it's what Eddie will always do. He'll peel to make space. He'll swing back in at the right moment. He'll jump in front of his centre-back. He'll see the centre-back's number until it's time to flip to the other side, and he's in open space, and it's just a very, very nice move. All credit to Martinelli, but Eddie's always going to hit his spots at just the right moment.
Yeah, can I just over-egg the pudding here as well? Because I feel like I need to. It's actually, and again, maybe I'm influenced by the fact that it was like 2 yards in front of me and I was at pitch level. It's actually quite a clever finish because the goalkeeper, he's massive, by the way. That's one thing I noticed. But he's out like that, star jump, Martinez World Cup
Basuna,
style,
isn't it? He's Irish.
and he's like and but he steers it away. It would have been very, very easy for him to just go like straight into the goalkeeper, but he has the presence of mind. I know he's 2 yards out, so look, I'm not telling you it's like the second coming of Ronaldo or anything like that, but just the way he angles his foot to take it away from the goalkeeper's dive, it's actually a very clever finish. Maybe very clever is overdoing it, but it's a clever finish, and he could have missed, or rather the keeper could have just smothered it if he hadn't done that.
Yeah. By the way, one thing I will say that put a damper on this game a little bit right around halftime, a couple of silly yellow cards handed out. Anthony Taylor seemed like he was pretty intent on making himself the center of attention at the point that he felt that maybe the game was not going to be as interesting. And Saka now clinging to 4 yellow cards, trying to get through to the period where they reset. I believe Thomas Partey is as well now. Gabriel, I think, is as well. So just a couple of tight ropes to walk. I'll have to double check those, though. I'm certain on the Saka
it's
one.
Saliba.
Clive, Saliba. Yeah, Saliba, not Gabriel. Clive, did you want to weigh in on Nketiah before we start to get how the game changed in the second half?
Just wanted to say I thought you did some good stretching runs, some channel runs, which we don't always get. And I thought was really smart. Again, I love seeing the recognition of when you need to help your teammate out. So Saka had a big defensive day. And so Eddie stretched into the right-hand corner a couple of times. So I thought, yeah, mate, I like that. That's what you need to do. Your mate's doing all the work, stopping their most dangerous player. You go and now do some of his forward running. And that's what a team is. And I really think that's the sort of stuff I look for. I thought he was better this game than the last game. I really did. I thought he was far more team-orientated, whereas the last game, I felt he was trying to prove to us all that he deserved to be in that shirt. Now he scored the goal. I think he feels like he's part of the team. I think that's a big step forward.
Yep. And I mean, his goal makes it 3-0. And I thought for sure at 47 minutes at 3-0, it was going to be a walk in the park. And I think the manager did as well, because at 3-0 on the hour mark, the fullbacks come off. And from that point, I mean, it is an astonishing shift in the game. I think the field tilt went 94% or something like that to Brighton after the fullbacks changed. And I really want to dig into this with you, Clive, because like it really is. And I want to be clear about something, right? Because I think there were some people that were critical of Arteta making that change. It's too destabilizing, this, that, and the other thing. Look, you got games coming thick and fast. You got Newcastle in 3 days. You're up 3-0. There's not a change I'm going to be critical of up 3-0, where I'm going to criticize the manager. You have got to be able to manage a 3-0 lead with 30 minutes left in a game. So I'm inclined not to get too upset. But the field tilt was 95.8% to Brighton. 95.8% to Brighton after the substitutions. So I mean, it definitely was the big change in the game. And I'm just curious, Clive, how you think about the difference that made. Tomiyasu certainly looked rusty. I mean, in losing Alexander Zinchenko, we did lose a measure of control, but we had already sort of been sitting back into a mid-block. What do you think in particular made that such a difficult change for us to come to grips with and gave Brighton such a foothold in the game?
Honestly, I may be the wrong person to say on this, because I was having truffle hummus and halloumi at this moment in time, right? So so
that
I didn't
was more
feel
fun than the last 30 minutes of this game. So
and
you win.
And a raspberry daiquiri, right? So I didn't feel like the stress you guys feel. But what I will say is, I sat here about 8 months ago, talking about how I wanted him to trust more players. And you can't keep playing the same team, because when you're going to need them, they're not going to be ready. And we've got some big games coming up. And there's a chance that Tomiyasu might play left back in some of those games. And so we're gonna need them. And the only way they're going to get ready is given the fact we've spoken about Saliba, and we can see what happens when you're not ready. Did you watch Gabriel on some of those early friendlies when he was rusty? The only way they're going to get ready is if they play. And I think Brighton took off Trossard as well, didn't they? So so I'm thinking they think the game is dead, and suddenly the game wasn't dead. and they brought on a young kid centre forward, score his first goal, which he would never have got if Sleeper was sharp. So I didn't look into it too much and think this was all about, the substitutions. It's just the game, the rhythm of the game. We probably conceded one goal more than we should have done, and that was on a pure mistake. The edginess came with the offside goal. Then we would have thought, oh, okay. So you, Elliot, watching it live that period, you walked away with a scary emotion of what could have been. Whereas I'm thinking, listening on Twitter or trying to watch it, I'm thinking, well, the game's there. They take off their best players, and we take off a couple, which is the right thing to do. Because we've got some big games. We want them fit. We want Thomas Partey fit. We want these guys on the pitch when we really need them. And we just have to ride it out, right? So I can tell you what happened on the Tommy Acid goal, what he didn't do right. He presses out of his hole and doesn't press out. He doesn't press out. He doesn't go all the way out. He presses out and stops, allows him to turn around and pass into the hole that he's just left. Now, when he's sharp, he's right up against them, bang, on his heels, don't get around, don't get his head up, can't see a pass. They have to turn that, go back to the semicircle. But he just trotted out to get involved. And that's the dog leg that a team needs to go and score, right? But you guys were probably better placed to tell me the intricacies of what actually happened. I just felt it was just a game flow, game state issue. And we just got a bit sloppy because we were in total control.
Yeah, and it is tough, right? You have two. Zinchenko is one of our controlling players. He comes off. Thomas Partey is one of our controlling players. He comes off. Ben White, I think severely underrated in terms of how he helps us keep that sort of 3-2-5 shape. He comes off. And suddenly, you're playing with El Neni and you're playing with Tierney and you're playing with Tomiyasu, and by the way, instead of Jesus, you have Nketiah, which is, a little step down in terms of control and possession. And I thought we looked kind of tired. I thought we looked fatigued. I thought, the weather's not great. That pitch is just a bit heavy. We know that from playing there before. I think we lost a bit of a spring in our step. And I think this is the other hard thing. One of the things I've really praised about this team is the way we play just makes sense. It can accumulate a lot of points, Tim. And so when we're ahead, we keep playing that way. When you're behind, you naturally play that way. I don't think we necessarily have the right group or the right mindset or even that much practice playing with 32% possession and 4% field tilt, where we're pinned back into our defensive third. I don't think we're set up to do it. I don't think we do a lot of it. And I think it's very uncomfortable for us. And I think when a team that is designed to play in the attacking third starts to spend 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes in the defensive third, you're going to start to see the way it's not necessarily well suited to that. If I had to be critical of Eddie, actually, which I'm willing to be in this one moment, I thought Eddie was late getting to his spots a few times when we started to sink deeper. I thought Eddie was slow to press the ball. You've got to press the ball when you're sitting deeper because you cannot give a Premier League player 5-10 yards to play that ball in. And those balls between the center back and the fullback, between Tomiyasu and Saliba, they were being played by Eddie's man. Clive, you've raised your hand twice. I cannot overlook that. Please come back.
Only because I wanted to say this is where we have to go. So what we do, we look at the substitutes and we think, oh, we've lost these players come out, these players come in. But our 3 forwards all played 90 minutes. They all played 90, and that to me is the issue. If we have fresh, springing forwards, then we can stretch the pitch, we can press onto them. And I actually think, and I watched Saka I did my little rewatch today, and he was walking on purpose.
Yeah.
And I'm all right with it because we have to literally rest our players on the pitch. That's the truth, right? We've got no forwards to bring on that can stretch the game.
Clive, I was thinking, it's so funny you say this because I'm like, we're going to play Newcastle in 3 days, and we can't take any of our front 3 off. We're taking off fullbacks to rest. We can't rest our front 3 in a game where we have a 3-goal lead.
Eddie hasn't played 90 minutes in 6 months.
And now he's played 180 in 4 days or whatever it is. So
and every other team, which we're about to talk about, I mean, Tim and Clive have often talked about this Christmas period. There's no reason people should be tired. They've only played 1 game in the last 6 weeks, but that's not how it works. Everybody looked tired this weekend.
Yeah, and the manager tells you whether, like, with a 3-goal lead, he still didn't think, I'll bring on Marquinhos for Saka. I'll bring in Vieira for Martinelli. He did not do that. And you'd like to be able to do that. And that, that's why the January transfer window still feels big to me. Clive, were you done with your point there about
I am done. Again, if you guys think the fullbacks were rubbish, if you guys think that Anelli was rubbish, then that's your prerogative. I just looked at it and said to myself, my view, you're as good as your forwards. I always say this. And when your forwards are naturally done their job, got 4 goals in the bin, they're naturally going to have a moment of, okay, we're just about done here. And that allows the other team to get confidence. And that's it. That's all. And they can move the ball around and get into our area. So for me, when we sort that forward bench out, by the way, we got Smith Rowe, Jesus, who are injured, and we need to buy 1 or 2. That's a podcast in itself. When they come back in, then these lot are all in trouble because we can step up the gear again. We really can.
Yeah, and by the way, it wasn't so much me saying that the subs were rubbish. It's more like Party's more of a help in maintaining dominance on the ball than El Nenny's going to be. And, Zinchenko's going to give you a measure of control that Tierney doesn't. And, all up and down the line, you start to make a number of those kinds of changes. And we did lose some control. But I think the forwards, you're right. There's a lot of culpability there in terms of not closing down. Tim, in terms of that period, here's the dumb thing. Sometimes I just think the mood in the ground can make it feel like the game was more nervy. All right. Yes, it's not ideal to let a team have all the ball in your defensive third for the last 20 or 30 minutes of a game. But the closest they ever got was 2 goals. They get it to 3-1, and we almost immediately in 6 minutes make it 4-1. Okay, they did get it to within 1 goal, but it's ruled out by the clearest offside you'll ever see, as I mentioned. Miles and miles offside. I kid. But to be fair, we had an opening goal against West Ham ruled out by the same kind of fractional half, little click off a cleat. So what goes around comes around. How nervy did it feel to you? Do you think that it's the mood in the ground and the noise that's being made that contributes to a sense that game is getting nervier than it is? Or do you think based on how we were playing in the mood in the ground that it started to feel like an inevitable collapse was coming?
It did feel nervy. It definitely felt nervy. I felt nervy. Everyone else did. Kind of a lot of the singing stopped, particularly because it was a bit of a roller coaster. Like they came back to 3-1, and yeah, they scented blood a bit. I think there were just so many little things going on that added up in terms of they didn't create a lot of other actual they had a lot of territory. But other than their goals, they didn't have a lot of chances. I don't think. But also, I think it was a little bit. We thought the game was done. A little bit, right? We've got Newcastle on Tuesday. It's a big period. We need to kind of just see this out a bit. And then, at 3-1, everyone gets excited. Then it's 4-1, and you go, oh, phew, now it's over. And then all of a sudden, off the back of a mistake, where everyone's in the right position, really, it's 4-2. And yeah, there was definitely a momentum shift. I think in terms of both of the fullbacks, I think you guys have covered it pretty well in terms of losing maybe some controlling players. Tierney did left back stuff, I thought, really well when he came on. Got his tackles in, got his clearance in. As a defence, again, it's almost like the Eddie conversation. We're hand waving the goals. It's oh yeah, he scored twice in 2 games, but is he dropping in and linking up play and stuff like that? And it's so it shows you how football analysis I think has developed, and it's the same with Tierney. Nothing went down his side. None of the goals were down his side. He defended well and everything, but we're kind of yeah, but he's not in the centre circle playing 300 passes, is he? Tomiyasu's the one who looked a little bit rusty to me. And again, I think that's kind of understandable. He hasn't been fit. For the last 12 months, he hasn't really been fit. I am a bit worried about that he doesn't seem to be able to shake this injury off in a year. And he's very in and out. It's very stop-start. I think maybe, I think also maybe a little bit of the logic, as you said, if you can't do this at 3-0, when you've got Tomiyasu and Tierney, your first choice fullbacks from last season.
Yep.
So these aren't bums we're bringing on their, and that will have informed the decision. It's I've got 2 really good fullbacks here. Why, if I can't bring them on at 3-0, then I might as well just not have a subs bench. But Tomiyasu was the one who looked a little bit. He looked quite rusty to me, and again, I think part of the logic was probably, he's playing against his international teammate. not just his international teammate, but he's just spent 6 weeks training against this guy. And I'm sure there was a sense of, he'll be fine. And Tomiyasu's usually a great defender anyway. He was a little bit off his game here. He'll play against
I think his
Oxford.
positioning was bad. I think he got caught out. So the interesting thing is, if you watch the first half, Ben White's tucked in pretty central when we're defending without the ball, and leaving. Who was playing on the left wing? I guess Mitoma.
Mitoma,
Yeah, he was kind of leaving Mitoma out there, and it was Saka's job to race back and engage with him if the ball went out wide. But Ben White was keeping the space tight centrally. I think Tomiyasu got a little too preoccupied with who was available outside of him, and there was that gap between him and Saliba that was opening up, and they exploited that quite a bit.
Yeah, definitely. I also think, again, like Clive said, I think there's a game state thing here. If we'd have started this game with Tomiyasu and Tierney, I don't think this game would have turned out much differently. You can argue the cons of everything we've said about Zinchenko. I still think we win this game by at least 2 goals if we start those guys. It's just you bring them on into this, and if anything, I think Tomiyasu coming, he'll play against Oxford, hopefully if he's fit, and he'll work that rust out of himself. He looked pretty decent at left back, before the break and everything. So I'm not really worried about him. I think what it really brings out, though, is just how good Ben White looks. This kind of...
He's fantastic, yep.
This kind of... I really grew to like him at centre-back last season. And do you remember we had a conversation before that Palace game, first game of the season, and we were looking at, Ben White at right back. And I said I wouldn't be surprised if that survives the whole month of August. And I felt pretty smug about saying that. I did not expect it to still be a thing on January the 1st. And for me, for Ben White to look is there a better right back in the league at the moment? Because he looks absolutely physically, technically just incredible. And we're talking about drop-offs from other players. If you'd have told me a year ago that Tomiyasu would come on as a sub and he would look like a drop-off from Ben White as a right back, I'd just be like, what have you been taking?
I love Ben White's cutbacks, right? I've become a connoisseur of these things, and I just imagine what would happen if Kolasinac had got to that position and cut it back versus what does Ben White do every time? He always picks somebody out. It's always quality. It always has a purpose.
Yeah, look, I think in general, this felt a little nervy too, in part because we knew how much is on the line, how much is at stake. I think there was a part of it that what we really wanted? We wanted the 3-0. We wanted the 4-0 so we could really thump our chest and be like, holy shit, we're going to win the league. And so because the game ended with a little bit of Brighton getting back into it, look, Ramsdale went into the dressing room and was probably having a fit, right? The players don't want the game to end this way. Paul, we'd be remiss if we didn't mention one beautiful thing, though, that happened during that period. So when they get it to 3-1, well, the best thing you could do is make it 4-1, and we do. The Martinelli goal is a great goal. The pass to Saka not being played notwithstanding. But Paul, I don't know if you've been on the internet, but there's a video on the internet. And if you watch it, you may need to dim the lights and put on some music. There are actually quite a few videos like that on the internet, but this particular video is a reverse angle. It is the Arsenal goal camera angle of Odegaard's first time pass to Martinelli for that goal.
Yes, I've seen it.
And it is exquisite. There were a couple passes in the game. Thomas Partey plays a ball into Martinelli for the shot he takes that leads to the Nketiah goal that is just perfectly weighted. And how many times do you see an overlap, right? Just a simple overlap ball weighted too hard and the player has to race to the byline and then check back or it's left short. And just perfect passes. But that Odegaard pass kind of in swinging, I guess you'd call it, it curls in right into the stride of Martinelli first time up the pitch. It's
the
fantastic.
Jorginho no-looker. Now, I know I've subtracted a little bit from that by mentioning Jorginho. Yeah. That there's another player who can play that. But, this is your quality kind of deep midfielder playmaker who, Odegaard has looked upfield. He knows what's on. He's praying Partey is going to roll the ball to him. Partey's onto this. He's already looked upfield. I think actually Partey looks at, should he do it or should he swing it to Odegaard, who's in the better spot? He lays it off to Odegaard. who just does the no look because he's already looked. Martinelli's on it. His timing's perfect off the halfway line, so he's not offside. He blitzes Lamptey, who can't. In fact, the only reason Lamptey lives with him is because Martinelli has that cushion, and now he's all about control. The build up to it, if I remember right, is Partey's actually gone back into the box.
Hey, Paul, just back off your mic just a little bit. I'm getting a little plosive off you. That's taken away from the genius of your analysis here. Yep, thank you.
Yeah, I think this all starts with Partey getting back, cutting out a counter in the box, knocks it to Xhaka. Xhaka knocks it back to him. Partey then is just about to make that choice. Do I first time it over the top, or do I give it to Odegaard? He knocks it infield to Odegaard, who just does the no-looker. Perfect arcing ball. It's a beautiful video from behind. Go and find it out on the Twitters. And just a beautiful arcing ball. Perfect pace, perfect line. Beauty of a left footer over on that side. It brings Martinelli in towards the box. Martinelli just needs to do everything right. That's all he needs to do with each touch, and he does. It's a thing of beauty.
It is, and it is the goal that ultimately I think makes this game safe, even if it didn't feel that way. Clive, I don't know if you saw it. Did you catch the little GIF going around the video of Mikel pointing to his head and say, think, calm down, think, pointing to his head, and I love it, except that it's redolent of Mustafi doing the same thing after he had just given away a terrible penalty or something. Mustafi, there's a very famous Mustafi pointing at his head saying think, but there was a big smile on Mikel's face too, kind of like, guys, what are you doing? Settle down, calm down. The offside, I do think saves us. I will say that. This started to feel like one of the, what? There's just something about football, you guys. And I can think of Barcelona's famous comeback against PSG, right? In the Champions League. You can think of certain times. The Newcastle 4-4. There's something about football where you can feel it slipping away. And once that starts to happen, there's no stopping it. It becomes like an inevitability. And I do think that offside saves us, because I think if that gets to 4-3, I'm not sure we see it out. What I'm curious to ask you about, though, Clive, is what do you think Mikel's reaction will be, not to the media, but behind closed doors to the guys? I think coaches sometimes like a win where there's a little meat on the bone to complain to them and work with them and say, I think it's also nice to be put through a little bit of the ringer, a little bit of adversity, right? This is the first time I think I've seen the pressure get to the lads a bit, just look a little bit like, because there's no reason why they should have started to have the roof cave in on them other than nerves. So I'm curious, how do you think Mikel will have thought about this, address this with team? Do you think it'll just be, hey, don't worry about it, that was a great performance, it's a win? Or do you think he will try to nitpick a little, get stuck into this a little, use it as a teachable moment, given that it has been relatively smooth sailing for a while?
Well, every game is a teachable moment, really. And whether it's be a preseason game or any game, you can always re-emphasize something that you want to re-emphasize. So what I will say is he did an interview and he came in and he said what really pleased him was when he went into the dressing room, the players were already talking about how they could get better. And so that was his moment of the day. Because that means the players are coaching themselves. And that's what you really want to get to, that people are fixing and coaching themselves. I was a bit worried. But don't forget, I don't worry as much as you. Don't think anybody does, right? But and so
someone's got to.
I rang my son at this moment. I said, "Mate, what's going on?" And he says, "Don't worry about it, Dad. It's all in the bag." He goes, "They're just flashing around." And I go, "Okay." So I was cool. Now I'll speak to you, and it's like, Flippy, you've lost 10 years of your life.
Wait. Now stop just for 1 second. I'm going to stop you, Tim. Am I the only one who was worried? Can I get some validation?
No. I was as well, and so were the 2,999 people around me.
Okay, good. All right, just double checking. Clive,
like I said earlier, I may be the wrong person to talk to on this one when it comes to those in-game live feelings towards the end, because I didn't feel the same because I was watching it remotely the last half an hour. So So yeah, but what I will say, and I want to talk about something, and maybe I said it, but I'm not sure how clearly I said it. The recognition of the triangle on that fourth goal was just brilliant. When Partey stretches it, Odegaard comes from the side, bang, triangle. The goal is set by that movement, and then he flips it around the corner, which is just a standard pass. Once Partey stretches, he's got to link. So you heard me use the phrase linking and stretching. When one stretches, someone's got to link, and that's how you form your triangle. That's how you get things moving. And I'm seeing this more and more. The Eddie goal the other day, do you see how the triangle formed? Odegaard came in, formed the triangle. Eddie recognised it early, got himself set, rolled, goal. This is becoming really, really prevalent in what we're doing. Recognition of that is the key, and we're doing it so slickly and quickly. I am loving it, and more importantly, I watched other teams today. I'm sure you're going to get onto it, Elliot. Mate,
we are.
They're not playing very well. I'm not seeing any of this.
Right.
You know,
right.
I'm not seeing any of this. I watched the Spurs game. My goodness, it was so quiet. It was so quiet, and there's nothing, no pace, no cohesion, no movement. I didn't, like I say, I may be the wrong person to talk about stress, because I walked away with the tactical beauty of our play, even in a 30% possession game. There's more than enough to walk away with to say we can do that again next week and the week after.
If you have 3 expected goals every game, you're going to win 99% of your games. Like, at the end of the day, the thing that I like about this, if you go back to like the Unai Emery era, for example, and we will get to love for Unai Emery in a moment, there were some games we won ugly. We didn't have the ball. We didn't have the shots. But we also, like, the statistics suggested we deserved not to win those games. What I mean is, on balance, the better chances were created by the opposition, and we rode our luck. In this game, Brighton did have the ball and the territory late, but on the balance of the chances created, at one point it was 14 shots to 4, with Arsenal having like 2.8 expected goals to like 0.4, 0.2. This was a game that we dominated the dangerous moments. And like, football is still about moments. Football is a moments sport, and the dangerous moments were dominated by Arsenal. And I think, Tim, we can start to move on from this, except to say, like, this is a ground we haven't had a lot of luck at. You know, this is not a place we've necessarily played well. We haven't necessarily had the lineups that we'd want to put out, or whatever you want to say about it. This is still that's a good Brighton team. It's a good, and granted, they didn't have Caicedo and they didn't have McAllister. It's still a good Brighton team. And we put 4 goals past him, deservedly put 4 goals past him, not fluky. I think every time I turn up to watch Arsenal, and then interestingly, every time I watch other Premier League games, it's not just the table that says we're at the top. I see the difference. You know, when you watch other Premier League games now, you know, it's funny. I used to watch, remember, Clive, you'll remember this. There was a City-Liverpool game that was a couple seasons ago, not last season, but the season before. And the level was outrageous. And I remember we did a pod where we said, like, you just watch that and you think, that's where we got to get to. That's what we have to get to. And Tim, when I watch us now and I then watch other teams, I go, we're the team at that level. We're the team playing that football that other teams are going to watch and go, we need to hit that level. And it's incredible to see, because it feels like yesterday that I was watching City and Liverpool play football that we could not even dream of. And now when I watch other teams, I think they only dream of playing the way we do, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And Clive referenced watching Tottenham. I watched Liverpool the night before this game, and just and look, it kind of stands to reason they're changing their forwards around a bit and things like that. But that
if there isn't a gambling inquiry into the 2 goals that the own goals that were scored in that game, I have no idea what's going on.
They keep going behind and Spurs keep going behind. We keep going in front in the first 10, 15 minutes of games. And definitely, and it's that, you know, like I said at the beginning, it's that repeatability, that template. I had a dig around when I did my column last week. I did like a dig around the data and what because I was looking at like attacking improvement, and I was like, I'm expecting everything to go up, and everything more or less has gone up. But what was interesting to me was that possession compared to last year hasn't actually, it's gone up. Like our average possession, this is before the Brighton game actually, which will bring it down again. It's like only 1% up on last year, and like we're having like half a shot more on goal, but it's the position. Like then I looked at like touches in the final third, shot up. Like we're having broadly the same number of touches of the ball, but where we're possessing the ball is completely transformed. And then you look at the shots where we're shooting from, the XG has gone up a lot. So the number of shots hasn't gone up much. The XG has gone up, and like so that shot selection, that's dominating territory and things like that.
And
then,
Tim, can I add a little bit? I think when you go and look at how often we launch it from Ramsdale, I think that's a big piece of it too. You kind of think of us building up from the back and building through midfield, which we sometimes do, but we often just skip that and say, let's just play it in their half. That's why possession isn't that high, but like the attacking metrics, the final third metrics are really high. He launches every goal kick, unless it's exceptional circumstances, and in open play, unless it's just part of that kind of organic play, he's pretty happy to lump it upfield as well, and then we go from there. It's actually in some ways a hybrid with kind of that way Liverpool have played, of why screw, like they can play from the back, but why screw around? Sometimes just get it up there, get it, especially against a Brighton team who is very good with a midfield block and all that kind of thing. Why fart around trying to get in and around them? Play it into their third,
then counter
play
press
football. When you have the energy and when you have you can't do it for 90 minutes. And Brighton's just a classic game of, we didn't need to do it for Brighton for 90 minutes, and we couldn't have. It might be very similar to how we end up playing against City, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And like, just in closing, basically what I looked at in the data was what the average Arsenal game looked like last year. The average Arsenal game last year was about 1.7 XG to Arsenal to 1.3 to the opposition. So that's a narrow victory. And it felt like that, didn't it? It felt like there were a lot of 1-0s where, and to be fair, that's
why we couldn't come back as well, right?
Yeah,
we go down a goal. That's why we couldn't come back.
Exactly. And to be fair, we did, and Clive, to put a point on the amount of stress, Rob Holding did come on 85 minutes for Odegaard, so that tells you Arteta felt the stress as well. But the average Arsenal game this year is something like 2.3 XG to 0.8. So like we're creating a bigger gap in those games, and that's an average as well. And actually, some of those averages I think are lower because we're getting games won earlier. So things like possession, like XG, I think they're maybe even lower than our dominance suggests because we're taking the lead early in games and then kind of having an element of control after that.
Yeah, look, ultimately, it's another step on this path towards believing and then ultimately completing the dream of being Premier League champions. And with Manchester City dropping points, we are 7 points clear at the top of the table. There's simply no hiding from it. If you're an Arsenal fan who's been trying to hide from it, it's too early. Don't talk about it. It's not like there's no hiding from it, and there's no reason to hide from it because we're good enough to not have to hide from it. And like this is the other thing: if you want to hide from it and be like, I don't want to think about it yet, I don't want to admit it yet. Like City didn't beat Everton at home. Like I know there's a sense that like, oh, they're all conquering and they just eventually will do it, and they may just eventually do it. But it's not like they're rolling over the Premier League right now and they're right on our heels. They're 7 points back and they've dropped some silly points. So there's a lot in this. Newcastle, by the way, failed to beat Leeds, failed to get a goal. But Clive, I got to turn it over to you for how much you're enjoying specifically what's happening at Tottenham Hotspur. Because Antonio Conte is doing what Antonio Conte does, reminding them of the history of the Tottenham. Oh, these expectations are crazy. For us, 4th was a miracle. Really, the expectation here should be 5th, maybe 6th or 7th. We don't have the means. We don't have the players. It's a process. But, the club knows. I was clear with the club. The players, the fans' expectations are crazy. Come on. Just Antonio Conte reminding Spurs fans what their position should be in the pecking order. They managed another point, and let's give them credit. Little golf clap. Another 0.66 expected goals at home to Aston Villa, who served up a very good evening to them, beating them 2-0. How much are you enjoying that Tottenham's football, which was once praised as being so bad that the only way is up, right? That was the thought, right? Oh, well, they're winning and playing terribly, so naturally they're going to start playing well. No, turns out they're playing terribly still. They're just not winning as much anymore. How much are you enjoying the comeuppance at Tottenham at the moment?
very much, and I'm not one for Schadenfreude, but I don't like
Bring it.
personality analysis. And just because they've got a personality manager and they've got the personality England captain, people just make assumptions that they're good. And it really annoyed me that they got the top 4 last year, though I think it's part, in hindsight, let's hope. Well, look, it annoyed me they got it the way they did. They didn't do much for it, right? They just got, Kane and Son got hot for a period of time. And that fed into people's narratives about them being a world-class pairing. Well, as I've learned through doing this podcast over the years, that 2 old blokes up front will eventually drop off, right? And and they're not getting any younger. And Son is crushed because he wanted to go to Liverpool in the summer and he didn't go. Kane wanted to get away, but his brother done a stupid contract, so he can't go. And so they focus on the international games in the meantime, building their brands. And we look at the team, and I always look at the players. I look at the players, and the day I'm going to be scared of Davis and Matt Doherty, it'll be a long day, right? And Eric Dyer can't even get in at the moment. I mean, gee whiz, did you see Eric Dyer in the last game? Shitting one with his tusk out for a corner, them scoring. I mean, this stuff, we're talking about Saliba just having one mistake we can remember all season, right? So it's just rubbish, right? So the Højbjerg is their playmaker. Well, Højbjerg's he's Matthew Flamini, right? That's it. And so what are we talking about here? They suddenly could have
spent a lot of money on Basuma. He doesn't play. They spent a lot of money on Richarlison.
I'll put Basuma in a team where you need to get the ball back and tackle the ball and get the ball back. When that's your role, then he's fine. When you put him next to Lallana and ball players inside, and really good players like Mwepu and Caicedo when Mwepu was playing, bless him, then he can just sit there and he can munch the ball and pass it on to other players to progress the ball. When you're passing it to Højbjerg, mate, you might as well keep it. Right, so your role is reduced. Right, Bentancur's a nice player, but it's not Modric. I think sometimes I really feel, I listen to his analysis. I mean, Steven Sessegnon on 25 million quid. Can't get a game. Just spent 20 million quid. Can't get a game. What? Ivan Perisic is legitimately their best player, and he's 106. Right. So what? It's. I think it's. I watched this game. I watched this game on Sky today with Souness, Redknapp, and Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank, and I felt the Spurs fan deserve better. They deserve better analysis of their club. People that actually understand what's happening. I felt the guy, David Graves, I think his name is, who was introducing the game, was better than the pundits. He was much better than them. And I'm thinking, no wonder our podcast is flying, because they're idiots on the TV analysing these games.
And you just need to be smarter than them.
They don't know what they're watching. They can't see the pending doom that's around the corner for that club. And I can see it, mate. And no matter how shiny your training ground is, no matter how much money you're going to make revenue when your new naming rights come in, no matter how shiny your ground is, and it is shiny, when it comes down to it, the fans want to watch good football. And you can't fool the punter. You can't fool him. And
even if they're as dumb as a Spurs fan.
I've done a bit of work in the house, and I have a new telly with nice surround sound. And I was checking the speakers, mate. It was that quiet. Do you know what I mean? It was that quiet on the TV. So I'm going to enjoy this little bit of Schadenfreude. He's not unlike me, but I want them. It's been half a decade, right? They need to be put in a box real quick. I hope we do it this year.
Yeah, and I mean, you just have to laugh. I mean, 6 shots. They don't create enough, and the idea that people are falling for this terrible football and thinking that eventually it would get results. The thing I love, you guys, go on Spurs Twitter. Just swap the name Son for Aubameyang, and you've got Arsenal Twitter 2 seasons ago. What, you think you just suddenly got bad overnight? You don't just age overnight. Oh, mate, let me tell you about that. let me tell you about the age curves, baby. I got your age curve information. Yeah, and they've spent badly, and they have a manager who only cares about himself and isn't the guy to carry them to any kind of long-term project. So they are in deep, deep shit, and I am absolutely here for it. I guess, Tim, that leads to Chelsea are a mess. They spent £500 million in 6 months and made them worse. But the Manchester City result is just a stunner. And I think we have to finish by just saying What's your feeling on Manchester City? Because the data would tell you that they're still excellent. You watch them, they still look excellent. They have a center forward that's unlike anything that's been in the league in a long time, just in terms of pure output. But they're dropping points, and they're dropping points that you wouldn't expect. And they've got hard games coming up. We have a hard run coming. They have a hard run coming. So have some of the City results changed your thoughts on the inevitability of Manchester City?
I mean, of course, yeah. I do tend to think they will do all right out of this run because I don't think they've got a problem against the bigger teams. You look at who they've dropped points against the season. I mean, Newcastle depends where you classify them at the moment, but that was the beginning of the season. Villa, Brentford at home, Everton at home. Like, there's a bit of a pattern there about the type of points that they're dropping. I think it's a mixture of things. I think it probably is a little bit of bad luck. Here in the UK, we're recording and it's like coming up to 11 p.m. in the evening, and the 10:30 p.m. What do you call it? I should know this because I'm subject to them. Embargo. There we go. Embargo has dropped, and so you get more of the comments from the weekend games, and some of the ones that have just dropped from Guardiola questioning the body language of some of his players and kind of saying not all of them are putting in. I also do think there is perhaps some... I don't watch enough of City to be firm about this, but I do wonder whether... Maybe it's 2 + 2 = 5 stuff, but I do wonder if it's the whole, like, on a much, much finer scale, almost like the Ronaldo thing a couple of years ago, in terms of we got a guy up front who has 16 touches a game, 17 of those are goals, but he doesn't press. He doesn't have they lost? Well, they've definitely sacrificed at least a little bit of control, but it's just... Is that's probably one of the many reasons. Look, I don't count them out at all, because I think we've seen before where City have maybe got in by their standards a bit of a sticky situation, and Pep just goes, right, back to basics, back to the absolute basics in terms of principles of play, and they'll win like 12 games in a row or something like that. So, But yes, it does change the kind of, it's utterly inevitable. Like, there is like a chink in the armour there. And actually, because, there's a lot of kind of, if Haaland gets injured, maybe it's like toast for them. I kind of don't think it would be.
No, of course
I think
not.
if they put Alvarez up front, they'd probably, of course, they wouldn't have quite the same goal threat. Like, I don't want to sound like I'm saying that, like, Haaland's not worth it, because I kind of think he's that good that he is. Much in the same way that Mbappe doesn't press or track back or anything like that, but who cares, quite frankly. But I do wonder if they're sacrificing a little bit of that control. And let's say like Haaland was out for 4 months tomorrow. In a way, I think they'd be more dangerous, because I think they'd almost go back to what they know.
Yeah, and less lumpy in the results. Obviously, Haaland makes them more dangerous, but there'll be games where it's just not. He's like, they're down to 10 players, knocking it around, and if he gets on the end of the chances, great. If he doesn't, I just think there's a good chance in the league they'll be more inconsistent this year.
Yeah, and actually one of the things I have read as well is that the wingers aren't the same, and when you associate City at their absolute apex, it was Sterling, Sane, and now they've got like Mahrez likes to cut in, Grealish likes to cut in, Bernardo Silva likes to cut in. So I've read a lot of like they don't have the same like spread of play, they don't have the same width. I don't think like Mahrez is a really good player. I don't think he's the Sterling of 3 or 4 years ago. Sane, I don't think he's on that level.
The wingers more help them dominate possession than the guys they had in the past, who provided the threat that's now centralized in Haaland. So
exactly that.
I think it makes them lumpier in terms of results. I think they'll drop a few points we might not have seen in another season, maybe.
Yeah. Well, so last but certainly not least, Clive, it's a big, big game at the Emirates. It's Newcastle. It's the team that we expect we may be looking up at in the not too distant future. But for today, they look up at us. They're the team that wants to say, they're in this group with Arsenal and City. They're not, oh, by the way, they want to believe they're in the title race. They are 9 points back with a game in hand. So not in it, but they're right there. They're the team that I think is statistically anyway, and on the balance of play, probably rightly the third best team in the league. What makes them really, really special is their defense. They have the third meanest defense on XG and the meanest defense in the league on goals allowed. They're really good defensively. And I'm curious how you see this game shaping up, because we have a bit of a point to prove. I have no doubt that Mikel will reference the game at St. James Park at the end of last season and the way they just came to smash us and destroy our season. And we owe them one. And I'm wondering, how you see that narratively playing out, and in terms of the football, a good, solid Newcastle defense against, Arsenal's second best attack in the league.
Yeah, I do think I said this. I think I've said this the other week, didn't I? I think this is a revenge game for us, and but yeah, I don't fear Newcastle. I think they're a hardworking, quite an English side, if you see what I mean. They have their big boy centre forward in Wood, and he's a post-up merchant, or they normally go to Callum Wilson, who's a channel runner, and they fill in behind, right? So they work hard protecting their fullbacks, 4-2-3-1, 4-3-3. They, hard running players in centre mid, Bruno adding the sparkle, decent fullbacks, and Botman's not bad. I've always liked Fabian Schär, funny enough. Nick Pope is steady. There's nothing spectacular here. I think this is I heard a podcast in The Athletic talking about this, actually. And I really love this analysis. When this is the first phase of Newcastle, the next phase could be quite interesting. When they embed Alexander Isak into this group, if they do add better wide men with more speed, and they do add maybe a better quality box-to-box, in there. And you can see the next phase of Newcastle if they do it smartly. And those people they are hiring in the back end of the club are smart people. There is no rush. And I do think there's something there that maybe this is the best time to play them. We've got a fairly healthy group. We're playing at home, and the home advantage is huge for us. It's something really is electric, as you guys know. So, yeah, I don't look at them and fear them. I think if we get the result, the one I was worried about was Brighton, if I'm honest with you. I do think Newcastle is one I think we're going to do. Spurs is always unique. It's just a unique place to go. And if the results keep going their way, I think Spurs, we're going to see this as redemption day, And that could play into our hands if we have the healthy forwards that we need to sprint away, particularly late in the game. So, let's see. I'm not worried about Elliot, to be honest. I probably jinxed it now, but
I got that covered.
I do think we want this game, and I think we're going to get it.
Yeah, well, I mean, motivation is obviously not going to be an issue because we're fighting for a title, but I also think we have a little something extra to give them, and I think it could be a combative game. One thing to keep an eye out for, obviously, is the yellow card situation. Just a little worry there. I mean, you wouldn't want to go into Spurs away without Bukayo Saka or without William Saliba or, whatever the case may be. So something to just maybe keep an eye on. I will also say we better have Mudryk signed before we play Newcastle, because I'm starting to worry he's going to show up on Arsenal Fan TV or something if we don't sign him. I mean, every next social media post of the guy is increasingly Arsenal super fan. I'm expecting him to show up in full kit with a season ticket, trying to get on Arsenal Fan TV outside the Newcastle game. So we really need to take care of that poor lad. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. I think we can leave it there. I think, it gets tricky when the fixtures are this compressed, because if you wait, by the time you do one, the last one doesn't matter anymore. You're looking ahead, you're looking behind. So we'll try to keep the regular rhythm. We'll have this one out as you're listening to it. Obviously, we're going to have this one out. It's out. You're listening. And then I think we'll try to sneak one in maybe Thursday, another main pod. And all the way in between that, we'll have some Patreon stuff, but we'll definitely have an instant reaction after Newcastle. So we'll try to keep the schedule as regular as we can while these fixtures are going on. And then is it Oxford next weekend? Is that
Monday night?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, Monday night. That's right. And then it's Spurs away the following weekend. So we got some time to build up to that. And maybe some announcements coming up as well. So excited to tell you about that. So stay tuned for some big announcements coming shortly. Okay, we'll leave it there. Tim's on Twitter at Stillmanator. Thank you, Tim.
My pleasure as always. Well remembered again.
Yeah, the rare double correct on the occasion of the inauguration. I had to get it right both times. Paul's on Twitter at Stillberto. Thank you, Paul.
Stillman in my pants.
Stillman in my pants. I mean, we can arrange for that. Positive in my pants on Twitter. Clive's on Twitter, Clive PFC. Thank you, Clive.
Thank you very much.
My name is Elliot Smith. You should absolutely 100% and without hesitation block me on Twitter, Yankee Gunner. Thanks for being here, everybody. Happy New Year. What an unbelievable season we are living through, and long may it continue. Don't pinch me. I do not want to wake up. We love you, and we'll talk to you after Arsenal 10, Newcastle 0.